And you know what time it is? It's time for KP's Video News. KP's Video News, y'all.
It's time for KP's Video News, y'all. And as time goes on, man, a lot of things are being revealed. And at this point, in this stage in the history of the United States, and with the advent of computers and the advent of digital cameras that on, telephones that have cameras on them, and every place you go, man, supermarkets, gas stations, in some cities, just like Chicago, there are cameras on every single street in every single alley of the cities. So, back in the day, they used to be talking about, yeah, Big Brother's watching. Yeah, Big Brother's watching, but also Big Brother is being watched. So this story here is like a older story, but it's come back. It has come back around because of the footage of what happened in this case. And so we have a newly released footage of a black man dying in police custody shows state troopers choking and beating him as he said, "I'm sorry." Ronald Green died in custody of Louisiana state troopers in May of 2019 in Monroe, Louisiana. His family watched body camera footage of Green's arrest earlier this week, saying it contradicts initial police statements which said Green died in a car crash following a car chase. A lawyer for the family stated that Green was beaten and tased by police officers before he died of cardiac arrest. And the footage was only released to the family and their lawyer and has not been made publicly available in nearly a year and a half since Green's May 2019 death. Louisiana state troopers initially blamed the injuries that led to Green's death on a car crash at the end of a police chase in Monroe. But the body camera footage and an audio clip of the altercation previously released to the have raised questions among Green's family, who have filed a federal wrongful death lawsuit. The family has been lied to the entire time about what happened. The video was very difficult to watch. It's one of those videos like George Floyd and even Ahmaud Arbery where it's just so graphic. And Merritt stated that the troopers used abusive language during the arrest, calling Green a stupid son of a bitch, and at one point in the video, one officer put a foot on Green while another hog-tied him. Ronald immediately surrendered at his first contact with law enforcement. When the vehicle stopped, he put his hands up and said, "I'm sorry," Merritt said. His dying words were, "I'm sorry." Green's death was ruled accidental and the result of a cardiac arrest, and troopers have said Green led officers on a police chase after they had tried to pull him over for a traffic violation. Then he crashed into a tree. A medical report stated that Green had been bloodied and bruised while he arrived at the hospital, and an emergency room doctor found stun gun prongs in his back. And the doctor wrote it in a report that the police initially told him Green died on impact during a car crash, then said he had been involved in a fight and struggle with them where he was tased 3 times. Louisiana State Police didn't announce any discipline action against responding officers until this year. And Master Trooper Chris Hollingworth died in a single car crash after learning he was going to be fired. So karma, man, is something else, man. So one of the cops actually died in a car crash, but all the rest of them, man, need to be they really truly need to be arrested, and man, they need to be arrested and thrown under the jail for what they did. This is another update story here, and I talked about this one a couple of months ago because it came back into the light, and it's not as graphic as that one, but it was a black man, the black man in Louisiana serving a life in prison for stealing hedge clippers. Remember I talked about this one a couple of months ago, and anyway, 2 decades ago, and he was arrested and sentenced to life, and he was granted parole months after the state Supreme Court declined to review his sentence. The Board of Pardons and Committee on Parole voted Thursday to release Fairwayne Bryant, 63 years old. Records show he walked out of prison later that day after serving more than 20 years in the state penitentiary in Angola prison in Louisiana. It's another story. This story comes from Louisiana too. And Bryant will enter into a program in Baton Rouge that helps prisoners adjust to life after their release. Eventually, he will be allowed to live with his brother in Shreveport, Louisiana. And under conditions of his parole, Bryant will have a curfew, must attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and complete community service. Wow, that's not really being free then, if you got to go through all that. The Louisiana American Civil Liberties Union called the board's decision to grant parole a long overdue victory. And Bryant was 38 years old when he was arrested in January 1997 for taking a pair of clippers from a carport storeroom in a home in Shreveport. The homeowner was alerted to the theft and chased Bryant off. That same year, a jury convicted him of attempted simple burglary of an inhabited dwelling, and Bryant, who had previous convictions, was sentenced to life in prison because he was considered a habitual offender under the law. Bryant, in previous appeals, argued that his sentence was unconstitutionally harsh, but in July, the state Supreme Court declined his sentence. A court spokesman stated that 5 of the court's 7 justices, all white men, denied his request without giving an explanation. One justice recused himself from the case, while Justice Burnett Johnson wrote a dissent that the sentence was excessive. The man's life sentence for a failed attempt to steal a set of hedge clippers is grossly out of proportion to the crime and serves no legitimate penal purpose, Johnson wrote, comparing it to the post-Reconstruction era laws that mandated harsh penalties for petty theft with poverty. Those laws were largely designed to re-enslave African Americans and undoubtedly contributed to the expansion of black prison population that began in the 1870s. And this case demonstrates that modern manifestation, harsh habitual offender laws that permit life sentence for a black man convicted of property crime. Bryant had served as several past convictions, including the possession of stolen things, simple burglary, and attempted forgery. His only violent conviction, the chief noticed in her dissent, was for armed robbery in 1979. Neither the severity of Bryant's sentence nor its racial implications were addressed during Thursday's parole panel. The board members, 2 white and 1 black, noted Bryant's past criminal history. They also said that during his imprisonment, he attended drug and anger management programs and had not had any recent disciplinary problems. And so, you know, hey, because of his prior history of petty crimes to fuel the drug addiction, Mr. Bryant was sentenced to life in prison rather than given the help he was needed to recover from his drug addiction. And finally, after 24 years in prison, he has been given a second chance. And here's a situation. This is another follow-up story here. And I'm telling you, man, this stuff here, God help us all, because this stuff right here, man, is just like they said, the cameras are catching it all. You got outrage that boils over in Kansas City after a video captures the arrest of a pregnant black woman. And Deja Stallings gave birth to her first child, her daughter, named Desire, a few days ago on the morning of yesterday morning on October 16th. But the normally occasion was marred when the child went into distress with an elevated heart rate. 2 weeks ago, Stallings, her mother stated that she had been a victim of police brutality. Stallings, a black woman, 9 months pregnant, was thrown to the ground on September 30th during an altercation in Kansas City police. And that incident, according to Stallings' lawyer, Stacey Shaw, is the reason Desire ended up in intensive care. The night of the incident, people were gathered outside a gas station in downtown Kansas City to commemorate the life of a recent murder victim. The police came there twice, harassing us, Stallings, 25, stated. When they left, they came back again, saying one man was trespassing. Shortly after the second visit, officers began to break up the crowd and attempted to arrest the man they accused of trespassing during the attempt. Stallings allegedly intervened. I was out there like everybody else trying to record on her phone, and the officer pushed me, Stallings said. When he pushed me, I told him, don't push me because you don't have the right to push me. He said, you're fucking going to jail. Then he threw her on the ground, on her stomach, and put his knee on her back. Kansas City Police Department accused Stallings of hindering and interfering with law enforcement, according to the statement from the department. Police gave the woman and man several verbal warnings to leave, but they continued to physically interfere by attempting to pull the suspect away from police officers. One of the assisting officers then attempted to place her under arrest for hindering and interfering. The officer attempted to do so while she was standing, but she continued to physically resist her. At that point, he placed her on the ground to effect the arrest. She was handcuffed, turned to her side, and immediately placed in a seated position. A video shot at the scene, which has since gone viral, shows only a portion of the arrest. In the footage, an officer seen tussling with Stallings, who was then brought to the ground, twisting her arm and placing his knee on her lower back as onlookers plead with the officers, telling them Stallings was 9 months pregnant. For many people who have viewed the video, the episode was reminiscent of what happened to George Floyd, and man in Minneapolis who died at the hands of the police. And Stallings received a citation for hindering arrest, but she disputes police claims that she tried to pull the suspect away as police sought to arrest him. The name of the officer in the video has not been released, but he remains on duty and hasn't placed any punitive action. And they say that we're not naming that officer. The officer is currently on full duty. There are no restrictions or anything like that. Prosecutors confirmed last week that they're also looking into the matter, and the Kansas City Police Department said it's remaining cooperative with the prosecutor's office. In response to the lack of disciplinary action for the officer involved in the incident, protesters have been occupying the grounds of City Hall for the past 14 days and plan to do so until Police Chief Rick Smith either resigns or is fired. Civil rights group alleged that Kansas City's police department is plagued by racism. Protesters also calling for the termination of the officer involved in Stallings' arrest, as well as a reallocation of 50% of the police budget to safe housing, mental health, and public education. City Councilman Eric Bunch spoke in support of the protesters at a rally for Stallings last Thursday. Bunch said he would push the council to take the necessary action to completely reimagine what public safety means. He added that Kansas City Police Department's $272 million budget this year is more than the combined budget of parks, health, neighborhood services, indigent medical care, and housing and homeless services. We literally do not have the money to support the vital health care and quality of life issues precisely because we have reassigned ourselves to a reality in which law enforcement is the only tool to address these complex issues. And we want to hold the police officer and the police department accountable through the court of law for what happened to Deja, said Shaw. We are pushing for the police revision of their use of force policy to include pregnant women, and we're looking to have budget revisions by the end of this to end this cycle of violence. And one of the officers, Shaw, is referring in referencing the Kansas City Police Department. Dylan Pfeiffer, who killed a 30-year-old Terrence Bridges, a black man, in May 2019, was not indicted by a grand jury for the killing, and he returned to active duty just 9 days after the shooting. 6 months later, Pfeiffer was involved in an incident which he was accused of aggressively handcuffing a 15-year-old black teenager and restraining him while his partner Neil slammed the boy's face into the ground, breaking his teeth and causing him to need stitches. Shaw identified the officer who arrested Stallings as Blaine Newton, a man who Shaw says was responsible for the killing of Donnie Sanders, a 47-year-old black man, in March. Newton was not punished for the shooting and returned to active duty shortly afterward. We have a ton of police killings in this community, the Councilman Shaw stated. Police kill people and they won't do anything about it. This continues to happen and no one knows who the officers are until someone does the equivalent of dropping off an unmarked note with the information. Stallings says he continues to have frequent medical visits. She has medical visits stemming from the arrest, and her blood pressure is high and her bones ache. She said at last week's rally she struggled to walk from the car to the steps of City Hall to say a few words because she was in so much pain. And it's like, man, I'm telling you, man, this kind of stuff right here. This kind of stuff right here, man, it's doggone ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. Let's see. We got a security guard in Baltimore. You know, it's a really, it's a lot of crazy stuff going on, folks. You know, I can't state it. I can't state it enough that we're in the way this country is going right now. It's I don't know where it's going to end up at, but I know it's we're in bad shape. This country's in bad shape. And so you have to do what you have to do to maintain what you need to do and forget about being involved in the madness. And a security guard assigned to guard a ballot box in northeast Baltimore was shot Thursday morning and at 4:55 a.m. And the city lists a ballot drop box at Achievement Academy drop block. And so it's like, you know, this is a voting box where you drop your ballots off, man. And it's like, wow, you people literally had to go there, and you know, it makes no sense. It makes no sense at all why anybody would shoot somebody, man, you know, at a damn drop box. So police said the unarmed security guard was sitting in his car at the time of the shooting. Surveillance video reportedly shows multiple armed suspects approached and tried to open the door. When the man didn't open it, they began shooting. Investigators are looking into the shooting as a possible attempted robbery, and the ballot box was reportedly not tampered with and did not appear to be the suspect's focus. Right now, the box was not tampered with, stated Armstead Jones, the Board of Elections Director, and the Maryland Board of Elections said they are working with authorities in the investigation. And with the unusual voting style, because of COVID-19, drop box locations and their security was a top priority for state and local leaders. Now these efforts are being ramped up. We're going to try some other tactics to make sure that these votes are safe. The victim suffered non-threatening injuries, according to the police report. And anyone that has any information can contact the Baltimore Police Department, Crime Stoppers over there. So that means, you just got a security guard, man, unarmed security guard, man, shot, you know, and just shot, man, working at a damn, protecting a box, a ballot box. Yep. So, along those similar lines about voting, they had a fake black Trump supporter on Twitter forgets to crop out a Google search for his profile pic. So with upcoming presidential election in the United States, the tension is running high, especially on Twitter, where some fake Trump supporters are endorsing the Republican candidate fake and the most ridiculous fashion you could imagine. This week, Twitter has already suspended a bunch of accounts claiming to be owned by black Trump supporters. But one of the accounts has gone viral for quite a hilarious reason. Apparently, someone who set up the account forgot to crop out the part of the screenshot that shows the Google search. The search read, drum roll, black man photo. And the major facepalm moment was certainly cracked a lot of people up, but nonetheless, such actions are still worrying. So that means when they put the picture up, on the bottom of the picture, you could tell that they had went on Google to find the picture because it said black man photo under the picture. And so it's a fake, just totally fake account. And they even went so far as to try to find a picture of a black person. So, hey, black man photo, I'm telling you. And the screenshots of the fake account were shared on October 12th. And since then, have amassed 20,000 likes and over 4,000 retweets and the hundreds of comments. And the caption read, "This might be the funniest one. I am a black person and I am a Trump supporter." Oh man, I'm telling you, a fake black Trump supporter out there. They trying to do whatever they can to trick you folks. Don't believe them. Don't believe them. Yep. Wow. Yep. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, it's like a bunch of crazy foolishness going on. Foolishness. So, you know, hey, it is what it is, folks. So, I'm going to take it to the stage. Got to take it to the stage, folks. I guess I can do this last one more. So, the LAPD is city, and the city council voted on Wednesday to move forward with plans to form an unarmed crisis response team. All right, let me say that again. The Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously on Wednesday to move forward with plans to form an unarmed crisis response team for non-violent 911 calls. So, man, it's about time. They should have had something like this 30 years ago. The council approved a series of measures recommended by the council's ad hoc committee on police reform that included creating a new classification for those city employees who would be dispatched to those non-violent calls and partnering with the nonprofit on a pilot program for the plan. The team would replace LAPD police officers in circumstances that would not require the use of either non-lethal or lethal weapons by officers. Those calls would include mental health, substance abuse, suicide threats, behavior distress, conflict resolution, and welfare checks. The question now is how the program would work. The motion calls for the unarmed teams to include mental health workers, homeless outreach workers, medical professionals, and others. The council voted in June in favor of the motion to divert nonviolent calls away from LAPD. And in July, the council slashed the LAPD's budget by $150 million for the 2020-21 fiscal year, and the cuts were in response to the police brutality protests in the wakes of George Floyd killing. And so in the past few months, it's seen a significant local unrest locally and nationwide following the deaths of several other civilians at the hands of police, including Dijon Kizzee and Andres Gallardo in LA County. City council meeting says they passed a measure to assure citizens that their pleas for change and accountability of law enforcement officers who use excessive force are being taken seriously. And black people in particular, we hear you, Councilman Herb Weston said Wednesday. We're going to respond to you, and we're going to make substantive reforms that you can see. The LAPD said it fully supports the council unanimous vote, and we shall see how this is going to work. And they said He said, and one of the city council said, we have failed people who really need our assistance. The majority of them happen to be black and brown and are struggling with mental health issues and homelessness. And to give the police department more to handle, I don't think it's working. So they need to they're gonna come up with this new plan. Two, you know, if a situation arises and it's not a life-threatening situation, and it's not a situation where the cops really truly need to be there, they're going to send somebody else out instead of the police. It's about time. Every major city needs to do the same exact thing that they're doing. Mental health workers, you know, drug intervention people, outreach workers, medical professionals. Those are the people that should be handling this stuff, not the police. Peace.